Welcome to the State of Accessibility podcast from Vispero. I'm David Sloan, Chief Accessibility Officer for Vispero, and each month I'm joined by a guest or two to discuss a topic of interest and relevance to the practice and profession of digital accessibility. So this is episode 19, and for this episode, for May 2026, we're marking the 15th annual Global Accessibility Awareness Day, or GAAD for short, which takes place on May 21st. GAAD is now well established in the calendars of the accessibility community as a time to highlight the value of accessibility efforts, to share knowledge, and to celebrate the progress that we've made. Now, Vispero's involved in a range of GAAD activities this year, but for the podcast, we wanted to focus on exploring their experience from the perspective of people who use assistive technology daily. And we have data from accessibility surveys, such as this year's WebA Million survey, an automated accessibility scan of 1 million homepages. And the data suggests that things aren't getting better at the rate we'd want. But that's data from automated scans. What about the user's perspective? What's got better? Where do issues still remain? And where should we prioritize our design, development, advocacy efforts? So joining me for this podcast discussion are two people whose perspectives I'm really keen to learn more about. My Vispero co-workers, Isabel Holdsworth, Assistive Technology Engineer, and Dane Geer, Technical Support Specialist. So welcome to the podcast, Isabel and Dane.
Hello.
Thank you. Hello.
So let's start off by talking about your assistive technology setup. What do you use and what sort of customizations do you apply to your assistive technology? And I'll ask you, Dane, first to share your setup.
Yeah, so I use Fusion as my primary assistive technology software. I use a 34-inch widescreen monitor with I really like the gaming keyboards with the way they type. It's really nice. I always use the Windows dark mode because I like the black background with white writing. And basically using JAWS, in conjunction with Fusion, it helps me be able to perform my job and remote into people's computers and get them all fixed up. Basically, that's my setup.
So you're including an aspect of screen magnification there as well. Is that right?
Yes, I usually run around six times magnification, depending on the situation. Sometimes I have to move it up higher due to the remote aspect of remoting into individuals' computers and adjusting their settings.
Cool. And when would you use JAWS? What situation? Is that always running or is it only certain times?
It's always running. Sometimes I'll put on speech on demand if I don't need speech at the moment, but it is always running through Fusion. But it's a very key component for me because not only do I have a visual impairment, but I also have a reading disability, dyslexia. So being able to hear what's going on helps me tremendously.
So that's a great example of having almost multiple assistive technologies supporting different accessibility needs working together and in different combinations.
Yeah.
So okay, so that's your setup, Dane. What about you, Isabel? What's your assistive technology setup?
Oh, mine's much more simplistic. I'm totally blind, so I can't see a screen, which means I can buy a nice cheap small screen laptop. Um, I use JAWS every day on my Windows computer. And how have I got it customized? Well, I don't actually. I try and use it out of the box, apart from the speech is so fast that most people can't really understand it because I have no patience. Um, but I try and use the out of the box settings because sometimes I'm testing um, websites from the perspective of, it could just be any user. So I don't know what their customizations are going to be, so I try not to customize. I also use a screen reader on my TV and one on my phone, and I use the screen readers wherever I can find them. I do have a couple of braille displays floating around, and I've got a little tiny braille book reader and note taker, which I use especially if I'm on the train or I'm going out somewhere and need to take notes. But mostly JAWS is the one I would use the most, and my favorite JAWS feature would be the Picture Smart um, thing, which I will go into as we carry on through this webinar, I guess.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing more about how you're using Picture Smart. But I'm curious about the way you have different screen readers on different devices. What, how how similar are they, and what are the biggest differences between the screen reader for your TV, for your phone, for your laptop?
Well, the one on the TV has a limited vocabulary, and it's really just for helping me to find out what channel I'm on and what the program is and what time it's going to start and end. Um, the one on my phone, well, it's an iPhone and the screen reader comes built in, so what you see is what you get, really. But um, I think on my computer, JAWS allows me to do more, you know. It sounds like a sales pitch, and it really isn't. Um, because of the oh man, JAWS is just a massive suite of tools bolted together, and I can do so much with it these days. And that alone improves web accessibility. But
Mm,
again, we'll probably get into that as we go along.
yeah, yeah. No, again, it's kind of helpful to get a sense of the different screen readers you use for different purposes, and the different devices you use them for different reasons, and some of them you're using for lots of different things, and some of them you have very
Yeah.
specific activity in mind, like watching TV and figuring out what's on next,
I
whatever.
think we have lots of talking. Blind people tend to have lots of talking things around. Like I've got a um, little food thermometer and a kitchen scale and that sort of thing. And we have lots of things wired up to apps now.
Mm.
And we can get more mainstream stuff because we can read it with using apps and things.
So let's shift kind of to talking more about web and software accessibility and usability and the progress or not over recent years. So I'm really curious to get your thoughts, both of you, on what the biggest improvements have been made, let's say in the last, whatever, 5, 10, 15 years, maybe, issues that you don't encounter anymore that you used to encounter regularly. We'll start with you, Isabel, and then we'll shift over to get your perspective after, Dane.
Well, I reckon web accessibility hasn't changed much over the past 5 years or so, I don't think. I think that there are things that are getting better. Like I think that devs are starting to understand the basics about headings and table structure and lists. You see a lot more headings and lists around. But I think that's the counterpoint to that is there's a lot more custom um, elements. Like for example, drop down menus. They're customized a lot, and you don't. It really depends if how much the developer knows about accessibility or how much accessibility is built into the development framework that they're using. So customized controls are a bit of a hit and miss affair, really. So yeah, some aspects are better, some aren't so great, but I think it's really remained pretty static for me over the past 5 years or so.
Would you say that's the case for all types of websites, or have some sort of websites for certain purposes have got better and others have stayed the same, or is that a kind of across the board observation?
I think apart from one, every banking website that I've used over the past 3 or 4 years has been a lot more accessible than they were previously. So I think financial institutions are starting to take web accessibility more seriously.
That's really interesting, given that financial institutions are pretty heavily regulated, and
Yeah.
their obligations. They're probably especially aware of the cost of money and fines and risk and hopefully the customer service opportunity to
Mm.
talk about accessibility. So
Yeah.
that's that's really interesting. Dane, how about you? What changes have you experienced over the years from a magnification screen
Well,
reader combo?
I feel like a lot of the newer web pages, some of them can be really busy um, in terms of navigating around. There seems to be a lot more complicated websites, I guess you could say. Um, I think that the key is though is that with a good foundation in saying, okay, we need to make this website accessible from the beginning helps it keep it going. I know that a lot of times whenever they say they update their website and then maybe their drop down menus broke or something gets changed like that. That's the hardest part. But I think that honestly we have came a long way in terms of accessibility. The one thing I feel like we do need to have worked on is the CAPTCHA
Mm,
element. Whenever you have to do a CAPTCHA, a lot of that's very difficult, especially if you're not using the audio portion and you're trying to use the picture portion where you have to choose. They say, "Oh, we'll find 4 pictures of a stoplight."
Mm.
Well, when you're visually impaired and you're trying to look at that, and they try to make it look abstract, so it's really difficult for a lot of people with that type of deal. But other than that, everything's became came a long way in terms of accessibility,
that's
especially with the way the websites are being designed now. It's a lot better for sure.
that's encouraging to hear, and I'm definitely with you on CAPTCHA. I'm still have pretty decent vision, and one of the things that CAPTCHA seems to intentionally do is to sort of distort what things look like, so it's harder to figure out, where is this motorcycle in all of these squares or just one? So,
Mhm.
it's almost
Yes.
making it deliberately harder. And so yeah, when you have a visual impairment to sort of factor into that, then it it gets even harder to prove you're a human, which is
I think
Yep.
some of the capture organizations are starting to think about this stuff because I know Cloudflare has a um a scenario where if you can show that you're blind, they won't ask you to fill it out a captcha. They'll just store some sort of cookie on your machine, and you're not asked to fill out the captcha anymore.
so how does that factor into sort of disclosing information that you might not want somebody to know about?
You have the option. You
Right.
don't have to. I've chosen to because it just makes I'm lazy. It makes my life easier. So, but if I didn't want to, then I could still carry on doing the audio capture.
Right. Yeah, and again, that's such a big, broad question that stretches beyond accessibility. Is like how much are you willing to disclose about yourself in order to make life easier? And I feel like everyone has a tipping point. It's like, no, you don't. I'm not sharing this information about me. But this, yeah, I don't care. Just make my life easy and let me get on with things.
I think it's easier if you know who you're disclosing to. You know,
Hmm.
if you know there sometimes you hear talk about screen readers being able to access information or um sorry about computers being able to access it so they can fire up a screen reader or website manufacturers being able to access it so they can deliver the website in a different way. I don't want that because I don't know who
Right.
I'm disclosing the information to, but that's a whole different story. Actually, you could do a whole podcast on disclosure by itself.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes sort of there's this well-meaning attempt to, well, the more I know about you, the more I can design something that helps you. And yet that creates this dilemma for people. Like,
Mhm.
do I tell you something about myself that others don't have to in order to be able to have the same experience as other people. So it's like forcing people to make a trade-off. And that again, that's where I guess the argument for inclusive design comes in. Just do it right without having to rely on somebody giving up information about themselves in order to adjust a design or a user experience. What's your thoughts on that, Dane? Do you have kind of concerns about disclosure in order to be able to interact with software? Or is that something that you've not had to deal with so much?
Well, like Isabel had said, it's definitely depends on who you're sharing your information with. But yeah, I'm very cautious on, what I want to share. I'm not going to go and give somebody my social security number, you know what I mean? So, um, but a lot of times, some of the websites can be more intrusive and wanting everything under the sun, and you're like, oh my goodness, what do you guys need? A blood sample, a DNA sample.
Yeah.
But I feel like, I mean, for instance, Apple's very secure. I like how secure they are and how they, have a lot of our stuff secure on device, which is really good. I think that more companies should follow that model where it's more, I mean, I know it's more locked down, but it's better for everyone because then your information doesn't get stolen and you don't get identity theft and all that. I know I've seen where actually my mother-in-law, they had called me up one day and they're like, oh well, Norton wants us to install their product and this and that. And I'm like, okay, well let me click assist in, let me remote in and see what's going on. Well, come to find out, it was actually a scam.
Oh,
And I had
Oh
to
no.
go in and find out that there was a separate type of browser installed, and it was like a tracker browser. And I had to get that all uninstalled and clean up everything. But man, they ended up losing
oh
money
dear.
because
Oof.
they
Oh,
went and paid to put this software on and it was fake.
oh,
So, you got to be very careful with
yeah,
things that pop up and say, "Oh, well, there's a problem here. You got a virus or you got something going on."
yeah.
Got to be very, very careful in that situation.
Yeah, I guess that's an example of how I started by asking, what sort of accessibility barriers have gone away over the years, or what sort of user experience barriers have gone away. But the user experience itself has changed and become more complicated.
Yeah.
Nothing's staying the same. So uh, the way that we interact, the prevalence of pop-ups and other notifications seems to have increased. And nowadays it's, an AI assistant offering to help you do something.
Yeah.
I've just had to reinstall or reset my laptop and reinstall all sorts of software. And every application I install now, it's like, here's the AI assistant. I'll tell you stuff and just get out of my way. Just so that the user experience has got more complex. It feels like over the last few years in general.
I love AI.
So okay, we had to talk about it because obviously it's AI is something that's influencing accessibility. So yeah, let's get your thoughts on how it's making doing stuff using tech easier or different, let's say.
Well, I've started playing around with it, asking it to create accessible HTML pages, and it's definitely not there yet. But it does make a reasonably good attempt, unless you want something a bit complicated. So I think there's a lot more work to be done there, but I'm really hoping that AI will help developers to increase accessibility, on websites and things.
How confident are you that or maybe that's a
Dave, you're
loaded
asking the wrong
question.
question. I'm an
How
optimist, so I'm about.
how long do you think it will take before you see a positive impact on accessibility?
I don't think it'll ever get accessibility completely right. I think that's a very it's a anything that requires thought and human interaction and testing.
Mm. And you also mentioned earlier, Isabel, picture smart AI. So that's a kind of thinking about AI from an assistive technology perspective. We've heard a lot about how assistive technology is already or could become superpowered through harnessing generative AI and other AI tools to make stuff content more accessible. Tell us more about how you're using Picture Smart AI and other related AI services.
Well, I started using Picture Smart. Um, it was when I started using it, it was in development, so I thought I'd be an early adopter and try it out. So my mum, I think I mentioned this somewhere before. My mum got married when she was 78, and I was at the wedding, and I started running some of the pictures of her wedding through Picture Smart and learned a lot of stuff that I did not know while I was at the wedding. The color of people's dresses and the style of them, what the wedding cake looked like, and how the top table was set up. Now I was sitting at the top table and I missed a lot of this stuff because I couldn't see it, and it was just like opening up a whole world. So I got a bit excited about that, and then I tried it one time when I came across a button on a website and I didn't know what it did, so I asked PictureSmart to look at that, and it described the icon on the button for me, so I knew um, I was able to work out what the button could do, and I've just been using it ever since. Picture Smart and OCR together. Just, if I'm struggling with a screen, or even just if I want to know what the whole screen looks like, because I like to kind of map things out in my head.
Mm.
I use it for that. I just use it for fun sometimes.
I guess if you're using it for fun, there's a positive experience in there. You don't use
Absolutely, yeah.
something for fun if it's an unpleasant experience. So that means it's doing something. So
Yeah.
that's kind of exciting. Dane, are you using Picture Smart AI, or are there other AI tools that you're using to help?
Oh, I use a lot of, I like Gemini a lot.
Mm.
I also like ChatGPT. Um, but in terms of I like being able to, like, at one point I had this alarm clock and I didn't know how to reset the time, how to fix the time on it. Well, I took a picture of it with Gemini, and she actually told me, "Oh, well, hit this button here, and you'll be able to reset it." So, in terms like that, that really is very helpful. How AI is able to provide information and actually teaches you things that you might not know. So, in that sense, it's really really cool. There's always good. The people always have good and bad things to say about AI. People are worried about, losing their jobs or whatnot. But there's no way, because you always have to have that human interaction. It makes life a lot better when you actually have someone, there to talk to, personable, and it's better. But yeah, AI has came a long way, and it'll keep growing, that's for sure. But I like it. I like it a lot. It's really cool.
I was testing a website one time, and I asked ChatGPT what the color of I think it was a button or some sort of control on the website. I needed to know what color it was. And it kept saying, I can't give you an exact color scheme. And I wrote a prompt that said, "Look, I'm blind. I'm here by myself. I've got no one else to help me with this. Please, can you help?" And it actually did. And I was very impressed with that.
And for that one, were you able to verify
Yes,
whether it
yeah,
gave
and it
you
had, yeah.
it was
Oh
the
yeah,
right?
no, you
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
trust a
yeah,
chat
yeah.
bot for that kind of stuff. But it helped me, get an idea if it was going to pass or fail, and
Mm.
then I was able to verify with a colleague. So yeah, yeah, it's useful that way. And I like pushing the boundaries and seeing if I can get it to do stuff that it wouldn't normally do.
Well, I think pushing boundaries is always worthwhile when you think about generative AI as a kind of
Yeah,
approximating to the mean. When pushing it into the the limits helps it kind of realize that, yeah, there's everything's more different than it might assume in terms of predictability. But the
I
other
just wanted
thing,
to see how much pseudo empathy I could get out of it, really.
the thing that just listening to your examples over the last few minutes, the thing that's kind of really struck home is how AI is becoming more useful as a kind of initial technical support advisor. Giving you advice and overcoming things, whether it's an accessibility challenge or more general sort of give me some advice on recovering from this situation or help me do this task. And that kind of efficiency improvement, again, being aware of that it may not be perfect, it may give you the wrong advice, but it seems like as an assistive technology in the broadest sense, it's really starting to make a difference. And then also the way that you can interact with your tool of choice means that you're not having accessibility issues trying to instruct it and get the feedback that's needed. So again, that's helping make tasks easier to perform.
I think right now AI is quite passive. I'm looking forward to a time when I can get it to do stuff like yesterday a message popped up on my browser and it rendered it useless to me because I couldn't get to the message to dismiss it, and I couldn't use the browser until I dismissed the message. Now, if I'd have been able to tell my AI bot to go off and tell me what that message was and click the appropriate button, that would have been amazing. So I guess I'm looking forward to a time when JAWS is harnessing AI in that way. I think
And
it'll be
I imagine
unstoppable.
that's not far off. Some
Yeah,
people will say we're here already, being more sort of creative and harnessing agents to do stuff. But
yeah.
it seems like we're pretty close to that kind of situation. So
That'd be
that's,
quite an exciting
yeah.
day.
So
Definitely.
Dane, from a technical support perspective, do you see how your role and the things you do are changing through use of AI, especially if you're supporting other people using assistive technology? Yeah.
Well, yes, I feel like especially with our Vispero companion and things like that, I do use that a lot. I use ChatGPT a lot because there's so many different scenarios and different keyboard commands. There's no way anybody, can remember them all. So those are tools I do use every day to be able to provide the best technical support for all my customers that I can, and get the correct answers for them as quickly as possible. So I know that a lot of times, AI, you got to be careful because sometimes it might give you the wrong answer, but it's a good way to start and it's a good way to get the information that you need to be able to help the customers quickly and efficiently.
Yeah, for sure. So we talked a lot, we talked about AI, we talked a lot about web applications and the sort of online user experience. What about mobile accessibility, native apps? Do you see a kind of similar, I don't know what to say, stagnation, but sort of has the progress towards improved accessibility and user experience from your perspective been, how does the mobile experience compare to the sort of browser-based or the desktop experience in your views? Dane, I'll ask you that first.
I've, well, I use iPhone. I mean, I've used iPhone, I've used Android, but I feel like that the accessibility for the iPhone has gotten a lot better. One thing I wish they would work on more is the dictation. The dictation's kind of when you're dictating, because I dictate a lot for text messaging and all that. Because there again, I have the reading disabilities that I have. But I do feel like it's came a long way from the beginning. I feel like it's really cool that they're implementing AI into certain things. Like I can take a picture of something that I don't know, like what type of animal it is, or and be able to send that picture through Chat GPT, and it give me an answer of what type of animal it is or what plant it is, and different things like that. Because I have a lot of animals. I have a mini pig, and I have goats and all that. So like certain foods, I'll put it through Chat GPT or Gemini and say, okay, is this safe to give to my animals? Different things like that. So I feel like, yes, the iPhone has came a long way. The cameras are a lot better. I use the magnification on my iPhone a lot to be able to zoom in on things, to be able to see, text and things like that. So yes, I feel like it's definitely going the right direction for sure.
And again, it sounds like it's the phone itself that's being an assistive technology as
Yes.
opposed to the apps on it.
Yes,
That's amazing. Isabel, yeah, share your
this is
thoughts.
what I was going to say. The phones are getting better, but I'm not sure that the apps are. I think apps are lagging behind a little bit as far as accessibility goes. Um, Last night I was trying to check in for an airline flight, and I had to get my partner to do it because the app and the website actually are both so inaccessible that I cannot use either of them. And especially those little um there's okay, so if I need to add my passport, there's a place where I have to put my passport into a frame, uh, hold the camera above the passport and fit it into this square frame, and it's something I just can't do. But
So the app,
I was doing
it's
it
trying to
for
give you feedback on positioning something to take a picture.
it doesn't give
It's,
me any feedback.
right. Oh, do you?
Uh,
Okay.
no, I was doing it for a bank today actually, and it did. It gave me feedback. It said I had to move the phone slowly, and then it made a blink when I got it right. So that was amazing. Again, another financial institution, so that was good. But
And that's
yeah, no,
puzzling because
it,
banks are regulated, so is the airline industry, and yet
well,
one
this is a
industry's
budget airline.
responded.
They don't
Yeah,
care.
yeah.
And we've been on at them for years and years, and they do not care.
That's frustrating.
Yes.
But but in general, your experience is that the phone is getting more useful, even if the apps on it aren't.
Yeah. But again, I can take a picture of the um screen of my app and ask a chatbot to describe it for me, but I can't ask it to tap something. So I'm still a bit, if I can't do something, I can maybe understand a bit better why I can't do it, but I still can't do it.
Mm. Yeah, that's kind of frustrating. You have more
Yeah.
detail of what the problem is, but you have no
Yeah.
way to solve the problem
Yes.
independently. Yeah,
Yes, but at least I can describe in a better way to somebody who I'm asking to help me fix it. But I still want to do it on my own. I don't want to ask anyone else to do it for me.
yeah. Why not? It's independent operation is something that should be achievable given
Yeah.
all we know about accessibility. So that's probably,
Definitely.
yeah, it's probably a good way to sort of turn as we sort of start to wrap up the conversation. And I'm going to put each of you on the spot here and ask you, what's the one thing you'd want digital tech designers, developers to know to make your experience as an assistive technology user easier? Dane, I'll ask you first.
Well, I feel like basically it's the way I think about it is like when you're building a house, you've got to have certain components to make that house strong. You got to have your plumbing, you got to have your electricity, you got to have all these things in place. Um, I feel like if they take and say, okay, when I first start building this website, if it's the foundation has accessibility in mind, where it's built in, it would make things a lot better because as you go along and they go to update the website, and add certain things, they'll have that accessibility component already there to where they can quickly adjust things in accordance to make it more accessible for individuals that are blind or visually impaired.
Yeah, well said. And with a strong foundation, it's less likely that what you build on top of it is going to fall down after the first gust of
Correct.
wind or whatever else that comes along.
Yes.
What about you, Isabel? What's your one piece of advice to give to designers and developers?
And I only have one.
Yeah. I have to limit it. But
Come on, let me have
share one,
two.
and if,
Right.
if there's an urgent second one, maybe we'll let you sneak that in as well.
Learn about accessibility. You think it's boring and you think it's obstructive, but it really isn't. And once you get the bug, you'll not be able to let it go. Um, you'll love it. And the difference that you're making to people, it'll really be worth your while. And don't ever come up with any ideas that are like Flash. Flash is the one thing that I do not miss. I'm so glad to be rid of it. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
See,
haven't.
I sneaked it in.
Yes. God, I'd forgotten about Flash. Flash
Oh my
intros to
goodness.
websites. Wow. Yeah, no, I
It
don't
was
miss them
awful.
either.
I used to,
Yeah.
I used to work embedding Flash into websites and I hated it.
Wow. Yeah, and I think the point that you made there at the end, that this work is fun and it's stimulating, it's creative, and it's rewarding.
Mhm.
And yeah, we talk about the laws and the regulations and the standards that you've got to follow. But ultimately, it's when you turn it around and say we're making better products for more people, then it just changes the tone of the conversation and makes it something that I would think is more appealing and something that sounds like it's a worthwhile endeavor. Why would you not want to do that?
People are making such a big difference to people who are already have to work harder to get the same. I haven't put that right. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, and people who are already kind of finding ways and being creative, but anything
Yeah,
that anyone else can do to make that easier and reduce the effort, then
absolutely.
that's well
Yeah.
worth it.
Yes, it's all about being independent, being able to be independent and not have to depend on anybody else. You can just get things done. It makes you feel good. So
Yeah,
it's definitely important.
yeah,
You
well
know, if you
said.
add a pretty design to your website, that's nice, and people think, oh, that's nice, or maybe not. But if you add structure to your website, suddenly I can do something on it that I couldn't do before. And that's where the big difference comes in.
Yep, the enabling factor.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great summary, and thank you both so much for sharing your experiences as assistive technology users and your advice, and hopefully that's advice that digital product teams and content creators can follow to make their user experience better for more people. So now you know the state of accessibility. I'm David Sloan, thanking Isabel Holdsworth and Dane Geer, and reminding you that the state of accessibility is always changing, so please help us affect change.